You're standing in your own kitchen, a room you've walked into 10,000 times. And for just a few seconds, maybe 5, maybe 10, you cannot remember why you came in. You shake it off. Everyone does that. But then it happens at the grocery store. You're reaching for something on a shelf and the word simply isn't there. You know what you want. Your hand knows the shape of it, but the name has dropped into a fog you can't find the bottom of. And the thought underneath that moment, the one that actually keeps you up at 3 in the morning, isn't about the forgetting itself. It's what the forgetting seems to imply about where this is heading. I want to stop you right there, because that thought is built on a lie. A medical lie that has been handed to patients for decades, including by people who should have known better. What you are experiencing is not your brain aging. It is your brain drowning in something specific. Something that has a name, a biological explanation, and an address. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what it is. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And you will never accept just getting older as an answer again. My name is Dr. Eleanor Vance, 30 years in clinical neurology. I started The Honest Brain because I got tired, genuinely tired, of watching patients leave their appointments carrying the same useless diagnosis. It's normal for your age. Take your vitamins. Maybe try a crossword. That answer doesn't just fail people. It stops them from addressing something measurable and biological that is actively progressing right now. Here is what the mainstream conversation almost never acknowledges. In adults in their 50s and early 60s, the primary driver of cognitive slippage is not neurons dying. It's accumulation, a specific kind of neurochemical buildup. I call it brain sludge with my patients because that is genuinely what it behaves like. That positions itself between your stored memories and your ability to reach them. Generic multivitamins don't touch it. Brain training apps don't see it. And the dietary advice that gets repeated endlessly on every health website never came close. The medical establishment has handed you tools designed for a problem you don't have, while the problem you do have gets quietly worse. The Honest Brain exists because you deserve an explanation that actually fits your experience, not a dismissal dressed up as reassurance. If you want to understand what the current research is genuinely pointing toward, subscribe. This channel exists for the people who are done being told to accept something that isn't inevitable. And right now, type the word sludge in the comments if any of what I've described has already happened to you. The kitchen moment. The reach for a word that isn't there. The name that vanishes mid-sentence. Type it, because you need to know you are not alone in this, and I want to know exactly who I'm speaking to. So what is brain sludge exactly? Let me be specific, because vague reassurance is not why you clicked on this video. Your brain depends on a protein called nerve growth factor, NGF, to build and maintain the neural connections that make memory retrieval possible. Around your mid-40s, NGF production begins declining, gradually at first, then noticeably. As it falls, the pathways that used to receive regular maintenance start to dim. At the same time, the brain's natural waste-clearing process begins to slow. Two particular neurotoxic proteins, tau and beta amyloid, start accumulating rather than being efficiently cleared. And reactive oxygen species, the chemical byproducts of normal cell metabolism, begin to build up and oxidize brain tissue from the inside. Quietly, structurally, real damage, happening without a single symptom you'd immediately recognize. Here is how I explain this to patients. Think of your brain's neural network like a city's drainage infrastructure. When the channels are clear and functioning, signals flow freely. Memories surface when you call for them. Words arrive when you reach for them. Spatial recall works without effort. But when sediment and debris accumulate in those channels, when the sludge builds up, the flow backs up. The information is still there. The signal is still being sent. It's just fighting its way through obstruction that wasn't there 10 years ago. That is what you are feeling. Not loss, blockage. Research published in the journal Molecules in 2023 identified a specific compound isolated from tamarind that measurably reduced both tau protein and beta amyloid levels in neurological models, while simultaneously increasing antioxidant enzyme activity. The implications matter. Targeted, plant-derived compounds can interact directly with this buildup at the biological level. This is not theoretical territory. And the principle that follows from all of this is critical. You cannot solve a drainage problem by adding more water. Pumping more nutrients into a blocked system without clearing the obstruction first doesn't restore function. The sludge has to go first. Let me walk through what hasn't worked, because I've watched patients try all of it, with real hope and real disappointment. The brain training apps. Lumosity, Brain HQ, the daily exercises promising sharper recall. Here is what honest research consistently shows. They make you better at the app. The improvements are almost entirely task-specific. There is virtually no meaningful carryover into the real-world memory and word finding that actually matter to your life. You get faster at patterns on a screen. The sludge in your neural channels sits completely untouched. The generic supplements. Fish oil. The B complex, the multivitamin that says brain support on the label. These are designed as signal boosters. They assume the problem is a raw material deficiency. But when the actual problem is obstruction, more raw materials just press harder against a blocked pipe. None of them were designed to target the protein accumulation sitting in your pathways. None. And the full dietary overhauls. I've had patients commit completely to the Mediterranean diet for 6 months, feel better broadly, and still blank on a grandchild's name at a birthday dinner. Because a broadly healthy diet is not a targeted neurochemical clearance strategy. It was never intended to be. You were not failing those approaches. Those approaches were built around the wrong diagnosis of your problem. That is not your failure. That is a failure of the information you were given. Let me walk you through what happens when you actually address the mechanism. And I'm going to do this in the order that matters, not necessarily the order the calendar shows you. Day 1. Nothing you can feel yet. The brain's inflammatory load begins to ease. The cellular autophagy processes, the cleanup machinery that had been running sluggish, begin to respond. This is foundational work. Invisible, quiet, real. Now, before I continue, I need to stop for a second. This sequence only holds when the intervention is addressing the actual mechanism. The wrong approach produces none of these days. You stay in the fog. That distinction is the whole point of this video, and I'll return to it. Day 3. You're at dinner with your family. Your grandchild asks for the road trip story, the one from 30 years ago that everyone loves. You begin talking. And the details just come. The name of the town, the name of the highway diner. You do not pause. You do not feel that quiet dread in your chest, the one that now shows up before you start a story, the one that whispers, "What if I lose the thread in front of everyone?" It doesn't come. You tell the story straight through, and afterward, something small and significant happens. You notice it didn't come. That noticing is the beginning of something you haven't felt in a while. Day 2. And this is what made day 3 possible. On day 2, you felt nothing different. But here is what was actually happening at a cellular level you couldn't access. Tau protein aggregates were beginning to break down. Oxidative stress markers were declining. NGF synthesis was reactivating along pathways that had been quiet for months, possibly years, starting to rebuild the neural connective tissue that the sludge had been suppressing. Day 2 was the hardest day because nothing felt like proof. But the drainage was clearing. The mechanism was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. Day 5. You're with people you know well. Your book group, a neighbor's gathering, a dinner out. And someone says something to you. A partner, a close friend. You seem really like yourself tonight. And what you feel in response isn't exactly pride. It's something more like relief. The specific relief that only registers when you realize how long and how quietly you've been bracing. You've been contributing to the entire conversation without mentally rehearsing your lines before you spoke. You've been responding instead of calculating. The version of you that could simply be present, she's been showing up again. Day 7. There's no announcement, no single moment. Somewhere mid-morning, you just notice. You haven't been bracing. You made plans for next weekend and didn't feel that low-grade anxiety about whether you'd be able to hold on to them. You introduced someone correctly without that half-second of internal dread before the name arrived. You drove somewhere slightly unfamiliar and didn't once feel disoriented. You feel like yourself, not a younger version, not some improved or recovered version, just you, the capable, present, whole person you have always known yourself to be. And that recognition, quiet as it is the entire point. Most of what exists in this category does not pass a basic scientific filter. Not because it is fraudulent, because it was designed around the wrong problem. Here is the standard I use before I recommend anything. First, it must actively stimulate NGF synthesis. Not support brain health in vague marketing language. Specifically trigger the nerve growth factor production required to rebuild and maintain the neural connections that the sludge has been degrading. Second, it must contain compounds that directly scavenge reactive oxygen species and interrupt the oxidative process driving the accumulation. The evidence for the specific compound doing that work has to exist. Third, it must directly address tau protein and beta amyloid buildup. This is the step that almost every option on the market skips entirely, because most formulations were designed before clearance was understood as a target. Brain support is not protein clearance. Fourth, it must actually absorb and reach the brain in meaningful concentrations. A capsule metabolized in the digestive tract before a single compound crosses the blood-brain barrier is not addressing a neurological problem. The delivery mechanism is not a secondary detail. It determines whether anything else on this list happens at all. Very few things meet all four. Most don't come close. But I want to tell you what I found when I ran everything through this filter, and what I started sharing with patients after I couldn't argue with the evidence any longer. What I found is called neuroprime. And I want to be direct. I do not recommend things quickly or easily. What drew me here is that it addresses the mechanism, not around its edges, but at its root. It is a liquid drop formula, which is relevant to the fourth criterion. The delivery gets compounds to where they need to go, rather than losing them in the digestive process. It includes a tamarin-derived compound that directly aligns with the 2023 research I referenced in this video, targeting the tau and beta amyloid accumulation that most formulations were never designed to touch. I have left a link in the description. What you'll find there is a detailed breakdown of the science behind this, the mechanism, the specific ingredients, the evidence for how it works. Read it, because after everything we've covered today, you deserve the full picture, not just my summary of it. Honest expectations. Most people report a distinct, if subtle, sense of mental clarity within the first 7 days. Full results build over 30 to 60 days of consistent use. And that timeline is actually consistent with how protein clearance and NGF recovery operate biologically. This is not a stimulant. I would not be comfortable recommending it if it were. 1 drop, sublingually, or in your morning tea or coffee, takes 10 seconds. That is the entire daily commitment. And if it does not deliver what the evidence suggests it should, there is a 365-day full money-back guarantee. You return what you didn't benefit from. That eliminates the financial risk entirely for someone who is rightfully skeptical after years of being let down by supplements that promised more than they could explain. One more thing before you go. Type the word myself in the comments. Not for me, for you. Because choosing to address this is an identity decision as much as a health one. It's choosing to remain the person your family turns to, the one who doesn't need help finding the word, who arrives at every conversation fully present and fully themselves. If there is someone in your life, a parent, a friend, a sibling, who has been quietly blaming their age for something that has nothing to do with their age, share this video with them. That's a conversation they deserve to have. Your brain is not betraying you. It never was. Now you know where to actually start.